Leona showcase, boys. Let's go. So Leona seems kind of basic to me.
Divine light shines within me.
Leona lights up her foes when played first in a round.
Bask in the light's radiance.
Her allies are also strong. Wait, what is... I know we saw her, like, we flashed her ability.
Dawn has arrived.
I kind of wanted to, like, hang on it so I can pause. Come on. Like, she literally flashed us her ability earlier. I just don't want to, like, go back and pause on it. I just want to, like... Oh, my God. Wait, okay, hang on. I've just got to do it. I've got to do it. Okay, who can make this out? Daybreak, stun the strongest enemy, and she levels up when you've activated Daybreak 4 times.
Divine power of the sun.
Now, whenever the sun shines, Leona stuns the strongest enemy.
Question all that you are told.
So it stuns the strongest enemy every time you play a card or every Daybreak. Nice animation. Yeah, that looks pretty clean. This is pretty pog. I'm liking this. With Leona in your deck, bold moves win games.
I do not believe.
Basically, you just have to big dick it.
Daylight everlasting.
Got it. Okay, I'm not gonna lie. My boomer eyes and my boomer brain weren't be able to like read all those effects fast enough. So I'm actually gonna have to like look at where the visual splashes, because they probably have like all the cards, right? I'm just gonna have to pull this up, and I'm just gonna have to like read it this way. I think it's kind of like the only thing I can do at this point. All right, guys, let's just go ahead and pop right in here. There we go. All right, so this is Leona. She's a 4-mana 3/5, which is a pretty sweet stat line. If you play her first, she stuns the strongest enemy. So she's sort of similar to Twisted Fate Gold card, right? Like, the opponent basically, like, against, like, an aggro strategy, they will effectively have to open attack on turn 4, or they're, like, mega screwed. Because, like, Twisted Fate Gold card is one thing, but Leona comes with, like, a blocking stat line body at the same time. So, like, reasonably speaking, this is not just Twisted Fate. Like, the opponent will have to open attack into you on turn 4 if you're representing Leona. Like, that's a really, really, really big deal, right? She's got a great stat line and, like, kind of like a free Daybreak. This looks pretty good. Leona's Daybreak, or when you activate another Daybreak, stun the strongest enemy. So, basically, whenever you Daybreak ever, you stun the strongest enemy. Wow. That's sort of like... It's interesting. It reminds you of Swain a little bit. Obviously, it's like not quite the same, and you're not going to have that like combo finish potential, but you can easily make things pretty awkward for your opponent, right? Okay, Leona's Morning Light. This is her champ spell. Give allies +2/+2 this round. Shuffle a Leona into your deck. Daybreak, activate all allied Daybreak, activate all allied Daybreak effects at once. What the hell? What? I mean, it is like a 5-minute slow. I'm not sure how viable this will end up being. This is a too high synergy of a card, so I'm gonna have to kind of like look through and actually like construct the deck a little bit to see. Zenith Blade. Grant an ally +1/+2 and overwhelm. Daybreak, draw a Zenith Blade. Grant an ally +1/+2 and overwhelm. Okay, cool. Yeah, and it basically, like, it can draw a new one as long as it's the first one you've played every turn. It can basically do it infinitely, but you can only play one a turn, because it can only Daybreak itself one a turn, right? For a 3-mana slow, again, it's hard to evaluate this without evaluating the entire, kind of like Daybreak archetype, because Daybreak is a high synergy deck. This one in particular is... pretty awkward. You can only do it 2 times because it draws from deck. Oh yeah, that's true. I mean, it only draws from deck. Okay, So yeah, I mean, at 3 mana, I'm not sure if this is quite worth it. There would have to be like a Daybreak synergy card. Again, this is too hard to evaluate. I have to like go back at the end of it. I have to go through all the cards and try to build the deck and see what makes it and what doesn't. I will say about Zenith Blade, it's a cool flavor. For those of you guys who never took Astronomy 101, the zenith is the specific point in the sky that is directly above any given point on Earth. All right, that is the zenith. It officially opposes the nadir, which is the exact opposite. The nadir is the point in the celestial body, sky, which directly opposes the zenith in the sky and is basically the bottom of. So when people say, you know, zenith is kind of like, it's sort of like it means peak, sort of, a little bit. And this is basically everything I learned from Astronomy 101. Don't take that class. It's actually completely useless. All right, Sunburst. Slow, deal 6 to a unit. Daybreak, instead, silence it this round and deal 6 to it. So it's basically like, it's kind of like a thermo beam that only works at 6, right? Which is like, hey, that's all right. You know, I mean, thermo beam is a really good card. This has Daybreak synergy. The fact that this only works at 6 is, of course, a major limitation that thermo beam didn't have. It's pronounced zenith. Oh, shit. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I slept through all of those astronomy lessons. I learned literally not. They did those at like 8:30 in the morning, and it was like a giant dark room. And the teacher was a very like he was like an ASMR speaker. He talked like this the entire time, and like it was just like it was so nice. I loved that class. I mean, I wasn't conscious at all during it, but it was amazing. Hard to recommend. Anyway. Yeah, I didn't learn shit, though. Okay. Sunburst. God, this one's pretty good. It definitely feels like it has the ability to be competitive. Probably not like a 3-F auto. A bit of a flexible spot if you need a bit like reactivity in the deck. Guiding Touch, Burst, heal an ally or your Nexus 2, and draw 1. So this one's unrelated to the whole like Leona package. This is presumably sort of like meant to be like the Soraka thingy. They do this thing where they like sort of tease... They tease a little bit of the next reveal with like their final card. It's like fucking Marvel movies and their fucking end credit scene. It's the same shit they do with these reveals, right? It was like, hey, you know, that works pretty well, you know, whatever. Anyway, you can tell it's Soraka because you can see that the hands that are sort of like strangling this goat, they're kind of purple hands, right? Soraka's a purple girl, and, you know, it kind of all makes sense. All right, so that one we're gonna evaluate a little bit later, but any sort of like cantrip draw 1 is gonna do pretty well, honestly. Like that's a pretty solid card. Okay, so the Daybreak deck, this is gonna be a big deal. Leona straight up is a great card. Leona is basically nuts. I think I'm pretty happy calling Leona a Lux. She's a very, very good independent card. Like, she's got a great body, 4 mana, 3/5. Basically, again, I mentioned with the troll, it was like a few days ago. We've only seen, and people pointed out, like, Shen currently has, like, the 3/5, but we've only ever seen, like, a couple of units in the entire game that actually have this kind of body. And Leona and Troll Ravager both kind of fulfill that. Let me move for Troll Ravager. Whereas Troll Ravager is, like, yeah, the 4 mana, 3/5. And it's a really, really good body. Like, I think that if Shen had more of a place in the meta, we probably would have seen a 4 mana 3/5 a lot more. 3 attack is just like kind of a perfect amount on turn 4. You often don't need more than that on turn 4. And the 5 health is like actually really, really, really hard to like take down on turn 4. So Leona, on top of that, she's got a great play effect. She is, you know, obviously kind of like the linchpin to her entire synergy archetype. But she's good enough to be ran basically outside of that. For the most part, most of her like value cards are kind of like low synergy, right? And to level up, she really only needs to be activating Daybreak 4 times. But of course, to be able to get like the payoff on the level up, you need to be able to like stun more often. This is like, I don't know, it's sort of a crazy curve play, right? Because when we build a Leona deck, we can, and she levels in deck as well. Yeah, she levels in deck as well. So the thing, here's something to understand. Here's something to consider. you can only activate Daybreak once a turn, right? Unless you cheat it out with one of the effects, like It's Always Day for us. It's Always Sunny card. Leona can be Daybroken on turn 4. We can go ahead and break day on turn 4 if we are able to basically, you know, play like, it would be like Solari Soldier into Solari Shield Bearer into, do we have a 3-drop that might be like a 2nd Shield Bearer or something into Leona? And there's not really a reason to get her out that early. Reasonably speaking, more often she'll be leveling on turn 5. Zenith Blade, yeah, Zenith on turn 3. No, don't do that. Reasonably speaking, she'll probably be leveling on like turn 5 or 6 in a Daybreak deck, but that's still nuts. Like, she's great when she comes down. Her level up is easy. Her level up is non-committal because all of these cards are completely independent on their own. And her level up payoff is quite low. So, straight up Lux, Leona's a really good card. She can be ran outside of these kind of like Daybreak archetype decks. Although, I mean, presumably the thing is, there's not really a reason to cut these other cards. So these cards are sort of like, what's a good comparison for these cards? Because as much as some of them are like high synergy archetype cards, most of them are basically just like a low synergy value package. This feels very much like Demacia in that, like, it's like a just kind of like curve play, just like mid-range vanilla things that get, like, you know, some free value, and all of their units are good independent of their synergies, right? Like, none of their units really need synergies to really make sense, and that's, I think, where they get the most value. Now, we might run a few Daybreaks on top of that, but probably not many. Probably not many. So, like, for example, we're probably not running Leona's Morning Light. I definitely don't think we would main deck that. I think that it's like, it's cool to imagine, but I don't see too much potential in this card because I don't really like the idea of committing all in for the Daybreak. I think we mostly just want to run Daybreak where it happens to be hitting value, because the thing is, Leona, she doesn't represent necessarily a Daybreak deck per se. What she represents is like a value mid-range Targon deck that is running the Daybreak package. The thing to realize is, like, the Daybreak package is so good. The card value of these cards independently is so good. Like, you look at Solari Soldier, card's nuts. You look at Solari Shield Bearer, card's nuts. This card we can skip, and this card's maybe alright. I mean, honestly, the best thing about this card is very simply that most of the Daybreak cards are pretty good, so you've got great odds. Honestly, that card might see play because of that. So you'd run those 3, you'd run Leona, and you'd probably run Sunblade. Sunburst. So I kind of mixed up the two in my head. You'd maybe run Sunburst, but I don't think you'd run Morning Light, and I suspect you wouldn't run Zenith Blade either. I'm not really a big fan of Zenith Blade here, personally. So basically, what I'm saying is, I don't see it as a Daybreak deck per se. It would be like a mid-range Targon deck, but like when you're in the deck builder, when you're trying to build a mid-range Targon deck, I don't think there's really any way you can escape these cards. Like, these 3 or 4 cards, now that we have Leona, are so good that you probably just kind of have to run that package in a mid-range Targon deck, right? And you'd probably want to run a lot of other cards, so you probably wouldn't be able to fit in Zenith Blade or Morning Light. Sunburst has a chance. So a lot of you guys are putting out Zenith Blade gives an ally +1/+2 and Overwhelm, and it's a grant. It's a permanent buff. The problem with that is, like, its slow speed is really, really clunky. It can draw another Zenith Blade to keep triggering Daybreaks, but if you want like a Daybreak engine that's going to keep Daybreaking, you'd really rather run like the 5-mana 5/5 Always Sunny guy, which I guess we're just going to call Dayman from now on. It just, like, because it's like, I mean, that's a reference to the show back when it was a good show, and it, you know, I mean, it's like, it makes it day, so obviously this is Dayman. We can just go ahead and decree that this card shall henceforth be known as Dayman, but you'd always rather run Dayman instead, if that's what you're looking for. If what you're looking for is like a mid-game, like, value engine that allows you to not to trigger Daybreak a few more times, and I'd happily run him in that slot. Zenith Blade is slow, it's clunky. The grant is not quite going to be worth it. Whenever you can grant Overwhelm, that always has some potential, but I don't know if you'd want to run this for that synergy. You might run this in another deck that just wants to be able to grant Overwhelm. Okay, So Leona's a Lux, Morning Light. I feel like I mean, it does have like a unique effect, activate all allied daybreak effects at once. So it could be hard to rate below something like a Heimer, but I think there would need to be a lot of synergy points for this to be good. I'll call it a Heimer. Zenith Blade, man, Zenith Blade's interesting. It's not actually like as bad. Zenith Blade could be more of like a this is fine Yasuo. Grant ally +1/+2 and overwhelm. It's like it already hits some synergies. It's okay to trigger a few more. Man, it's just like the slow speed hurts this so much. I will have to call this a Heimerdinger, honestly. I might rate this, like, I might boost this a little bit later. You guys are saying I'm crazy for calling this a Heimerdinger, but I don't, like, absolutely love this card. Like, the slow speed really kills it, and you often don't really want to be, like, triple drawing these. We'll see, we'll see. Sunburst. Sunburst is a bit better. It actually has, like, more potential to be ran with, like, more daybreaks. Basically, just, like, being able to, like, control the opponent's game plan is really powerful. This has the ability to silence champions if it's worded right. Now, I personally suspect that this isn't worded right. I suspect this is riot wording and that this actually can't silence champions. So whenever something comes out where like its effects like seems like it might do something crazy, I generally just kind of assume that it's riot wording instead. I don't think silencing champs is really that big of a deal either way, but that's I would predict that. And like I said, this card probably out of these three has most of the competitive potential. You could easily fit this card into stuff. Like the ability for it to actually control game plans is really valuable. And keep in mind, even though this looks like Demacia, and this is gonna play like Demacia, and it's gonna feel like Demacia, but remember, we don't have single combat. It's important. Demacia is absolutely the idea of old school mid-range Demacia. Before it was like more of like a kind of like tempo deck, the idea of old school Demacia was entirely carried by single combat as a card. When you didn't have single combat, like when that card is removed from the pool, without any reactivity, your game plan just kind of doesn't work. You do need a base amount of reactivity. You do need like some way to be able to react to the opponent's board. And of course, I mean, in this deck so far, we don't have a second color yet. So maybe our second color could be doing that. We'll see. But for something that fits our archetype, for something that fits our color already, for something that is decent value, I think Sunburst has pretty good potential. I'll happily rate it a Vlad. We'll see. I might have to update that a little bit later. And Guiding Touch as well is something that I'll have to evaluate tomorrow when we see more of the Soraka package. More of like the Soraka is going to be like a healing archetype. And that'll be quite interesting, right? So that's my overall first impressions. This is looking like a really, really scary strong archetype. Basically, it seems like... So I will say right now, this outclasses Taric by a lot. Like, it's gonna be laughable thinking about running Taric stuff when we could run Leona stuff. Like, these cards are all, like, just really good. And, again, this is a non-committal archetype. This is a package, not an archetype. Like, you will run this with other things. Like, you don't... This doesn't have to be your entire deck to keep triggering these daybreaks. But these cards independently are just so high value that there's just not a lot of a way to get outside of it. Okay, so Diana might be tomorrow instead. Yeah, it's possible that they might do Diana tomorrow instead. I feel like this goat thing makes me predict Soraka package, but we'll see. I mean, either way, it's going to be 2 days till we see the next champs. But that's my kind of like overall initial first impressions. I'm gonna be updating, as always, the Twitter post and like the pinned comment in the YouTube video. That's going to be giving my updated evaluation, because we're gonna be talking to some folks and seeing about like this is actually an interesting reveal. Some people might feel like, for example, I'm underrating Zenith Blade, overrating or underrating Sunburst, or maybe like, I guess possibly overrating the entire archetype as a whole. That kind of seems impossible though. This archetype is pretty nuts.